Picture this moment. It's midnight. You're alone in a room lit only by candles arranged in a perfect circle. You've spent hours preparing, drawing symbols in salt on the floor, copying sigils from a centuries-old book, memorizing divine names that supposedly protect you from what you're about to do. Your hands are shaking. You've drawn a triangle outside the circle. A brass vessel sits in its center. The instructions were specific. The demon must appear within the triangle, never inside your circle. That circle is the only thing between you and whatever comes through. You speak the words, Latin phrases, names of power. The candles flicker in the still room. You wait, and you wonder, what appears when you call a demon's name? According to a 17th century grimoire called the Ars Goetia, if you've performed the ritual correctly, you should see something very specific. A beautiful woman wearing a duchess's crown tied around her waist, riding on a great camel. Her name is Gremory. She's the 56th spirit listed in the Grimoire, a duke of hell, commander of 26 legions of demons, and she offers 3 specific powers: knowledge of all things past, present, and future, the locations of hidden treasures, and the love of women, both young and old. This isn't Hollywood demons. This isn't modern fantasy. This is Gremory exactly as documented in historical grimoires. Texts that educated men in the 16th and 17th centuries actually owned, studied, and some claim to have used. Tonight, I'm going to show you what these historical texts actually say about this demon, word for word from the primary sources. No embellishment, no speculation, just what was written down over 400 years ago. I'm going to read you the exact grimoire descriptions of Gremory from 2 key texts: the Pseudomonarchia Daemonum from 1577 and the Ars Goetia from the 17th century. I'm going to show you how this demon fits into the larger system of 72 spirits that these grimoires document in precise detail. I'm going to explore what these texts tell us about summoning procedures, the hierarchy of hell as these books describe it, and what practitioners were supposedly seeking. And I'm going to examine why this particular demon, with this specific appearance and these specific powers, has been copied and recopied for over 4 centuries. Before we open these grimoires, if you want to explore the authentic documented history of occult practices, not Hollywood versions, but the actual texts that our ancestors studied, subscribe to the Midnight Archives and hit that like button. Because here's what makes this fascinating. These aren't myths or legends passed down orally. These are written documents, manuscripts you can examine in libraries, texts with dates, authors, provenance, real books that real people owned. Whether demons exist is a question we can't answer. But we can answer this. What did these books say? What did people believe? What rituals were documented? Tonight, we're going to read the grimoires themselves. The circle is drawn, the grimoire is open, the text is clear. Let's see what it actually says about Gremory, the 56th spirit. Welcome to the Midnight Archives. Before we read what these grimoires say about Gremory, we need to understand what these books actually are. We're dealing with 2 main sources. The first is the Pseudomonarchia Daemonum, which translates as the false monarchy of demons. This was written by Johann Weyer, also spelled Weyer, a Dutch physician who lived from 1515 to 1588. Weyer was a remarkable figure. He was a student of the famous occultist Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa. He became a physician and served as personal doctor to the Duke of Cleves. And he was a pioneer in what we'd now call psychiatry. In 1563, Weyer published a book called De Praestigiis Daemonum, on the tricks of demons. This was essentially a point-by-point rebuttal of the Malleus Maleficarum, the infamous witch hunter's manual. Weyer argued that witchcraft accusations were nonsense, that the people accused of witchcraft weren't actually consorting with devils. They were suffering from delusions, from mental illness, that they should be treated medically, not burned at the stake. This was a radical position in the 1560s. Sigmund Freud later called Weyer's book one of the 10 most significant works ever written. As an appendix to this book, Weyer included a catalogue of demons, the Pseudomonarchia Daemonum, a list of 69 demons, each with a name, rank, number of legions, appearance, and powers. Weyer explained in his introduction that he was including this catalogue to show the absurdity of what magicians claimed, to demonstrate the ridiculous details that practitioners actually believed. He wrote, "Lest the monopoly of the satanic faction remains hidden, I wanted to append to the end of this book this pseudo-monarchy of the demons, that the curiosities, deceptions, vanity, tricks, impostures, deliriums, and obvious lies may appear clearly to all people." He also admitted something important. "I have omitted passages from this study in order to render the whole work unusable, lest anyone who is mildly curious may dare to rashly imitate this proof of folly." So Weyer was trying to expose and mock these practices, but in doing so, he preserved them. The first edition appeared in 1563. Later editions in 1577 and 1583 expanded the text. In 1584, an English scholar named Reginald Scott translated Weyer's demon catalogue into English for his own book, The Discovery of Witchcraft, which also argued against witch trials. This is our earliest documented source for Gremory. The second source is the Ars Goetia, full title, the first book of the Lemegeton Clavicula Salomonis, the Lesser Key of Solomon. This is an anonymous text. We don't know who compiled it. The oldest surviving manuscripts date from the 17th century. The Lemegeton claims to contain the secret magical knowledge of King Solomon, the biblical king who was granted wisdom by God, and who, according to legend, commanded demons to build his temple. That's the claim. The reality is that this was compiled much later, drawing on earlier sources including Weyer's Pseudomonarchia Daemonum, the Ars Goetia, the art of Goetia, meaning the art of summoning spirits, is the first section of this 5-part grimoire. It contains descriptions of 72 demons, not 69 like Weyer's list, 72. 3 were added, 1 was removed, and the order was completely scrambled. We don't know why. Multiple manuscript copies of the Ars Goetia survive in libraries, the British Library, the Bodleian Library at Oxford, the Folger Shakespeare Library in Washington, D.C., and others. These manuscripts differ in small details, but the core descriptions remain consistent. In 1904, a British occultist named Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers translated the Ars Goetia into English. Another occultist, Aleister Crowley, published this translation with his own commentary and illustrations. That 1904 edition made the text widely available and remains the most commonly cited version today. These are our sources, real books, documented, datable, preserved in libraries. Now let's read what they actually say about Gremory. I'm going to read you the exact text from Johann Weyer's Pseudomonarchia, Daemonum, first in the original Latin, then in the 1584 English translation by Reginald Scott. Latin: Gomori dux fortis and potens, apparet ut mulier pulcherrima, ax ducali singitur corona, in camelo equitans. Bene anvere, respondet de preteritis, presentibus, futuris, and occultis, thesauris, ubi lateant. Conciliat amorem mulierum, and maxime puellarum, imperat legionibus virginti sex. English translation from 1584. Gremory a strong and a mighty duke, he appeareth like a fair woman, with a duchess crownet about her middle. Riding on a camel, he answereth well and truly of things present, past, and to come, and of treasure hid, and where it lieth. He procureth the love of women, especially of maids, and hath 26 legions. That's it. That's the complete entry. Let's break down what it actually says. The rank is duke, strong and mighty. The appearance is described as like a fair, meaning beautiful, woman, with a duchess's crown about her middle, riding on a camel. The powers are threefold. First, the demon answers well and truly of things present, past, and to come. Second, it tells of treasure hidden and where it lies. Third, it procures the love of women, especially of maidens. The command structure consists of 26 legions under this demon's authority. Note the gender confusion. The text says he, but describes her and uses feminine pronouns inconsistently. This appears in the original Latin and the English translation. In Weyer's catalogue, this demon is listed as number 51 out of 69. Now let me read the description from the Ars Goetia, the later Grimoire. This is from the Mather's translation of 1904, but it matches the earlier manuscript versions. The 56th spirit is Gremory, or Grimoire. He is a duke strong and powerful, and appeareth in the form of a beautiful woman, with a duchess's crown tied about her waist, and riding on a great camel. His office is to tell of all things past, present, and to come, and of treasures hid, and what they lie in, and to procure the love of women both young and old. He governeth 26 legions of spirits. Let's note what changed and what stayed the same between these two sources. The rank remained duke, strong and powerful. The appearance description is nearly identical. Beautiful woman, duchess's crown at waist, riding camel. The powers are the same: past, present, and future knowledge, hidden treasures, procuring love of women. The legion count stayed at 26, but the position in the list changed. Gremory was number 51 in Weyer, but became number 56 in the Goetia. The name spelling shifted from Gremory to Gremory or Gremory. There are slight wording differences in how the powers are described. The Goetia added the specification what they lie in when describing treasures, meaning what containers they're stored in. And the description of love magic changed from especially of maids to both young and old. What's notable here is that the core description remained almost identical across decades and different authors. The beautiful woman, the crown at the waist, the camel. These bizarre, specific details stayed constant. This wasn't poetic language or symbolic imagery. This was meant to be an identification guide. If you successfully summon this demon, this is what you should see. Both Weyer and the Ars Goetia include sigils, symbolic seals, for each demon. Weyer's version didn't include sigils in the text itself, but the Ars Goetia does. Each demon has a unique sigil, a geometric design supposedly representing the demon's true name in angelic script. Gremory's sigil consists of several interconnected lines and symbols. It looks like abstract calligraphy or a mathematical diagram. According to the Grimoire, you would draw this sigil in your summoning triangle. It serves as a focal point, a signature, a way to call this specific demon and not another. Different manuscript copies show slight variations in how the sigil is drawn, but the basic structure remains recognizable. This is what summoners would have copied carefully onto parchment or directly onto their floors, trying to reproduce it exactly as shown in their grimoire. It's important to note what these grimoires don't tell us. They don't explain why Gremory appears as a woman on a camel. No symbolic interpretation is provided. They don't describe how the demon procures love. What does that process look like? The texts don't say. They don't specify when to summon Gremory specifically. There are general timing guidelines for different ranks of demons, but nothing specific to this spirit. They don't warn of any dangers particular to Gremory. Some demons are described as deceitful or dangerous. Gremory gets no such warnings. They don't explain the origin of this demon. Was Gremory once an angel? From which angelic order? The texts are silent. These grimoires are catalogues, not explanatory texts. They list, they describe, they provide procedures, but they don't explain the underlying cosmology or mythology in detail. We have the what, the why is largely absent. These are the primary sources. These are the actual texts. Written down, preserved, verifiable. 2 books, decades apart, both describing the same demon in nearly identical terms. A Duke of Hell, beautiful woman, Duchess's crown at the waist, riding a camel, 3 powers, 26 legions. That's what the grimoires say. Now let's look at the larger context these texts provide. Gremory doesn't exist in isolation. Both Weyer's Pseudomonarchia, Daemonum, and the Ars Goetia present systematic catalogues of demons. Weyer lists 69 demons. The Ars Goetia lists 72. Each entry follows the same format: a number in the sequence, a name with sometimes alternate spellings, a rank in Hell's hierarchy, an appearance description, powers and abilities, and the number of legions commanded. This is organized demonology, catalogued, systematic, like a reference book. Let me give you a sense of the full list by reading some other entries so you can see the pattern. From the Ars Goetia, the first spirit is described this way. The first spirit is a king ruling in the east called Baal. He maketh thee to go invisible. He ruleth over 66 legions of infernal spirits. He appeareth in divers shapes, sometimes like a cat, sometimes like a toad, and sometimes like a man, and sometimes all these forms at once. The 9th spirit reads, the 9th spirit in this order is Paimon, a great king, and very obedient unto Lucifer. He appeareth in the form of a man, sitting upon a dromedary, with a crown most glorious on his head. He can teach all arts and sciences and other secret things. He can discover unto thee what the earth is, and what holdeth it up in the waters, and what mind is, and where it is. or any other thing thou mayest desire to know. He giveth dignity and confirmeth the same. He bindeth or maketh any man subject unto the magician, if he so desire it. He giveth good familiars. Here's the 13th. The 13th spirit is called Beleth, or Bileth, or Bileh. He is a mighty king and terrible. He rideth on a pale horse with trumpets and other kinds of musical instruments playing before him. He is very furious at his first appearance, but after the magician hath had courage and not feared him, and hath drawn the figure in the correct manner, then will he submit and do all that is commanded of him. You see the pattern. Each demon has a specific appearance, specific powers, a specific number of legions, and a specific rank. This isn't random folklore. It's organized, categorized, systematic. The grimoires organize hell as a feudal kingdom with ranks parallel to earthly nobility. At the top are kings, the highest rank, ruling over vast territories and enormous armies. Examples include Baal, Paimon, Beleth, and Asmodee. Below them come dukes, high nobility, but subordinate to kings, while still commanding significant forces. This is where Gremory sits, along with demons like Astaroth and Valifar. Then there are princes, another high rank roughly equivalent to dukes in power. Demons like Citri, Stolas, and Orobas hold this title. Marquises rank below dukes and princes. Forneus, Marcosius, and Phoenix are examples. Presidents form another governing rank, including demons like Marbas, Bua, and Glaciolabolus. Counts or earls represent noble rank below marquises, Morax, Ronov, and Berith. Finally, knights hold the lowest rank mentioned, though very few demons carry this title. Gremory is a duke, the second highest rank. This places the demon among the more powerful entities in the catalogue. Each demon commands a certain number of legions. The grimoires don't clearly define what constitutes a legion, but Reginald Scott's 1584 translation includes a note stating, "A legion is 6,666. If we accept that figure, Gremory's 26 legions would mean commanding approximately 173,316 demons. That's not a minor spirit. That's a military commander, a general, a significant power in the infernal hierarchy. To put it in context, King Baal commands 66 legions. King Paimon commands 200 legions. Duke Astaroth commands 40 legions. Duke Gremory commands 26 legions. Gremory falls in the middle range, not the most powerful, but far from the weakest. Let's look at which other demons offer similar abilities to Gremory. Knowledge of past, present, and future is actually quite common. Multiple demons offer this capability. Botis giveth answers of things present, past, and to come. Morax knoweth things present, past, and to come. Orias knoweth the mansion of planets and perfectly teacheth the virtues of the stars. He knoweth things present, past, and to come. Vapula maketh a man subtle and wonderful in handicrafts, philosophy, and in sciences contained in books. Divination, knowledge across time, appears throughout the grimoires. At least a third of the 72 offer some form of temporal knowledge. Hidden treasures as a power is less common, but still appears multiple times. Bune greatly enricheth a man. He answereth truly to all demands. Glaciolabolus bewrayeth treasure. Forneus maketh one beloved as well of foes as friends. Wealth finding and treasure revealing appear throughout, but less frequently than knowledge. Love and lust powers appear in several demons. Cetri inflameth a man with a woman's love, and also stirreth up women to love men. He willingly detaineth secrets of women, laughing at them and mocking them, to make them luxuriously naked. Zepar works by inflaming women with the louvre of men. He changeth their shape until they may enjoy their beloved. He also maketh them barren. Salios procureth the love of women to men. But note something specific. Most love demons work in both directions, making women desire men and men desire women. Or they work with both genders equally. Gremory is specifically about procuring the love of women both young and old. The demon is explicitly directed at making women love the presumably male summoner. This gender specificity appears in only a few demons. Most are more general. Out of 72 demons, what makes Gremory memorable? The appearance is unusual. Very few demons appear as beautiful humans. Most appear as animals, monsters, or chimeric combinations. A beautiful woman stands out. Adding the specific detail of a duchess's crown tied about her waist makes it even more distinctive. The camel is unique in combination with the female form. Only one other demon in the entire list rides a camel, King Paimon, who appears sitting upon a dromedary with a crown most glorious on his head. But Paimon is described as male. Gremory is the only female-appearing demon on a camel. The combination of powers is notable. While temporal knowledge is common and treasure finding appears occasionally, and love magic shows up several times, having all three together is less common. Gremory is a one-stop shop. Want money, love, and information? Summon this one demon. The accessible rank matters. As a duke, Gremory is powerful but not intimidatingly so. Kings are described as more dangerous, harder to control. Dukes were considered more manageable while still being effective. There are no warnings attached to Gremory's entry. Read through the Grimoire and you'll find demons described as terrible, furious, a liar unless compelled, deceiveth. Gremory gets none of these warnings. The text suggests straightforward cooperation. He answereth well and truly. This combination, distinctive appearance, practical powers, appropriate rank, no major warnings, likely contributed to Gremory becoming one of the more discussed demons. One strange thing, Gremory is number 51 in Weyer from 1577 and 1583, but number 56 in the Ars Goetia from the 17th century. The entire order changed between these two sources. It's not just that a few demons were added, the whole list was scrambled. Demon number 1 in Weyer is number 1 in the Goetia, that's Baal, but then demon number 2 in Weyer becomes number 37 in the Goetia. Demon number 3 in Weyer becomes number 5 in the Goetia. Scholars have tried to figure out why. No clear explanation exists. Joseph Peterson, who maintains the Esoteric Archives website and has studied these texts extensively, writes, "The most striking difference between Weyer's text and the Goetia is the order of spirits. I see no explanation for the difference. It's almost as if a stack of cards got scrambled." One theory suggests different manuscript traditions existed, and the Goetia compiler drew from a different source than Weyer, one with a different ordering system. Another theory proposes the reordering was intentional. perhaps to obscure the source or to reorganize according to some system we don't understand. We don't know. What we do know is that despite the reordering, the individual descriptions remained remarkably consistent. Gremory stayed Gremory, whether at position 51 or 56. This is the system. 72 demons, carefully catalogued, each with rank, appearance, powers, legions. Gremory is one entry in this larger catalogue. Not the first, not the last, not the most powerful, not the most famous, but specific, distinctive, documented. Now let's look at what the grimoires say about actually summoning these demons. The grimoires don't just list demons, they provide instructions for summoning them. These instructions are extensive, elaborate, and specific. Let me read directly from the Ars Goetia introduction to give you a sense of what was required. The magician must be provided with a consecrated sword, a knife or sickle of magical art, a lance, a wand or rod, a staff, and other instruments. Also a book of spirits, made of virgin parchment. Also a secret seal of Solomon. Also a brass vessel to receive such spirits as are not to be employed in working. The text continues. Also vestments of black silk embroidered with gold and silver, with various devices and characters. Also a girdle of lion skin 3 inches wide, with all the names written in Hebrew. Also perfumes and incense of sweet spices. Also holy water from the font. The tools alone required significant resources, knowledge, and preparation. The core of grimoire magic is the magic circle, from the Ars Goetia. The master must have ready a circle made upon paper or parchment or drawn upon the ground, and within it there must be written the holy and most holy names of God. The circle serves as protection. The magician stands inside it during the summoning. As long as the circle remains unbroken and the magician stays within, the demons supposedly cannot harm them. The grimoires provide elaborate diagrams of how to construct these circles. They're inscribed with divine names from Hebrew scripture: Yahweh, Adonai, El Shaddai, Tetragrammaton, and many others. These weren't Christian sorcerers rejecting God. These were people invoking God's authority to command demons. The entire framework assumes you're operating with divine permission and power. Outside the protective circle, the grimoires instruct drawing a triangle. This is where the demon appears. The brass vessel mentioned in the tools is placed in the center of the triangle. The demon's sigil, like Gremory's geometric symbol, is drawn within the triangle or written on parchment and placed there. The theory is that the demon manifests within this triangle, confined to that space, unable to leave it or approach the circle where the magician stands. The Pseudomonarchia Daemonum includes a section on timing. It reads, "Observe the times in which the 4 kings can be compelled, from terce until noon, from none until vespers." It continues with instructions for each rank. Marquesses may be bound from the 9th hour till compline, and from compline till the end of the day. For dukes, the instruction states, dukes may be bound from the 1st hour till noon, and clear weather is to be observed. Since Gremory is a duke, the instruction would be to summon from the 1st hour till noon, and clear weather should be observed. This suggests morning summonings in good weather. Why? The texts don't explain. Presidents have different rules. Presidents may not be bound in any hour of the day, except the king, whom he obeyeth, be invocated. Nights also have their own timing, nights from day dawning till sun rising, or from evensong till the sun set. And counts or earls. Counties or earls may be bound at any hour of the day, so it be in the woods or fields, where men resort not. The actual words spoken during summoning are provided in the grimoires. Let me read a section from the conjuration included in the Pseudomonarchia Daemonum. This would have been spoken in Latin, but here's the English from Scott's 1584 translation. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost, Holy Trinity and inseparable unity, I call upon thee, that thou mayest be my salvation and defense, and the protection of my body and soul. I beseech thee, O Lord Jesus Christ, by the merits of thy blessed Mother, Mary, and of all thy saints, that thou give me grace and divine power over all the wicked spirits, so as which of them soever I do call by name, they may come by and by from every coast, and accomplish my will, that they neither be hurtful or fearful unto me, but rather obedient and diligent about me. It continues for several pages in this manner, invoking divine authority, commanding the demon to appear, threatening it with holy names if it refuses. Then, once the demon appears, the magician would state specific requests and commands. The grimoires are frustratingly vague about what actual successful summoning looks like. They describe what the demon should look like when it appears, but they don't describe whether the manifestation is physical or visionary, whether it's visible to observers or only to the summoner, how the demon's voice is heard, how long the manifestation lasts, or what signs indicate the demon has departed. Later grimoire commentators and practitioners would fill in these gaps with their own interpretations, but the original texts leave this unclear. For Gremory specifically, a successful summoning would presumably mean seeing or perceiving a beautiful woman with a crown at her waist, riding a camel. It would involve being able to ask questions and receive answers. It would mean making requests regarding treasure location or romantic influence, with the demon complying with commands. But the mechanics of how this works, the actual phenomenology of the experience, the grimoires don't detail. At the end of the working, the demon must be dismissed. The grimoires provide specific language for this, typically called the license to depart, from the Ars Goetia, O thou spirit N, because thou hast diligently answered unto my demands, and hast been very ready and willing to come at my call, I do here license thee to depart unto thy proper place, without causing harm or danger unto man or beast. Depart then, I say, and be thou very ready to come at my call, being duly exorcised and conjured by the sacred rites of magic. I charge thee to withdraw peaceably and quietly, and may the peace of God continue forever between thee and me. Amen. This is important. The ritual isn't complete until the demon is explicitly dismissed and sent back to wherever it came from. The grimoires don't specify several crucial details. There's no mention of payment or price. What does the demon receive in exchange for services? Medieval occultism generally held that demons hope to corrupt souls, but the grimoires don't specify any bargain. The magician commands by divine authority. Demons must obey, whether they like it or not. Consequences of failure aren't detailed either. What happens if you break the circle? If you pronounce a name wrong? If the demon refuses? The texts imply danger, but don't spell it out. Frequency limits aren't mentioned. Can you summon the same demon repeatedly, daily, once in a lifetime? The grimoires don't say. Results timeline is absent. How quickly do the promised effects manifest? If Gremory reveals a treasure location, do you find it immediately or must you search? If she procures love, does it happen instantly? No timeline is given. Verification methods are missing. How do you know the demon told the truth? How do you verify it's actually Gremory and not something else? The grimoires trust that correct ritual produces correct results, but provide no verification procedures. These gaps mean practitioners would have to figure out a lot on their own, guided by oral tradition, personal experimentation, or other sources not included in the grimoire texts. This is the ritual framework as documented in the grimoires. Elaborate preparations, protective circles inscribed with divine names, triangles of manifestation, specific timing, lengthy invocations, commands given by divine authority, careful dismissal. And if you did all this correctly, according to these texts, Gremory would appear, a beautiful woman, duchess's crown at her waist, riding a great camel, ready to reveal the past, present, and future, to disclose hidden treasures, to procure love, or so the grimoires claim. Let's establish what we actually know about the authors and compilers of these grimoires. Johann Weyer lived from 1515 to 1588, and we know quite a bit about him because he left historical records. He was born in Grave, Netherlands. He studied medicine and became personal physician to Duke William of Cleves. He published multiple books on medicine, magic, and witchcraft. His major work, De Prestigiis Daemonum, which translates to On the Tricks of Demons, was first published in 1563 and was extensively researched. It cited classical sources, biblical texts, and contemporary accounts. Weyer was arguing against witch trials. He believed that supposed witches were mentally ill, suffering from melancholy or delusions, that the elaborate confessions extracted under torture were fantasies, not facts. He was trying to save lives. The Pseudomonarchia Daemonum was included to demonstrate the absurdity of magical claims. He was essentially saying, look, these magicians claim to summon demons that look like women riding camels. This is obviously ridiculous. But by documenting it, even to mock it, he preserved it. Weyer stated in his introduction that his source was an older manuscript called the Liber Officiorum Spirituum, the Book of the Offices of Spirits, also called the book called Empto, Solomon concerning the princes and kings of the demons. This source manuscript is now lost. We only have Weyer's version. The author of the Ars Goetia, on the other hand, is completely unknown. The text is anonymous. Multiple manuscript copies exist, dating from the 17th century. Different manuscripts show slight variations, suggesting they were copied from even earlier sources. The text claims Solomonic origin, attributed to King Solomon of biblical fame. But this is a common claim in grimoires, attributing magical texts to ancient wise men like Solomon, Moses, or Adam lent them authority. Scholars believe the Ars Goetia was compiled in the 1600s, drawing heavily from Weyer's earlier text, from the same lost source material Weyer used, and possibly from other grimoires circulating in manuscript form. Whoever compiled it was educated. They had Latin literacy, knowledge of Hebrew divine names, and familiarity with ceremonial magic traditions. But beyond that, we know nothing about them. These texts were part of a larger tradition of magical manuscripts circulating in medieval and early modern Europe. Other grimoires from the same era include the Key of Solomon, which is different from the Lesser Key and focused on talismans and angelic magic. There's the Sworn Book of Honorius, dating to the 13th century. The Grand Grimoire from the 18th century focused on demonic pacts. The 6th and 7th Books of Moses was an 18th century German grimoire. And the Munich Manual of Demonic Magic from the 15th century contains demons later found in Weyer. These were manuscript texts, hand-copied, passed between scholars, occultists, and nobility. They weren't mass-produced or widely available. The grimoire tradition drew from multiple sources. It combined Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah with Arabic magical texts from the Islamic world. It incorporated medieval Christian theology about angels and demons, along with classical Greek and Roman texts on magic. Folk magic practices also influenced the tradition. It was syncretistic, combining elements from different traditions into comprehensive systems. Based on manuscript provenance and historical records, grimoires were owned by several types of people. Educated clergy owned them, priests and monks with Latin literacy and access to libraries. Some cathedral libraries contained grimoire texts. The contradiction of clergy practicing magic didn't seem to bother practitioners. They saw themselves as commanding demons by divine authority, not worshipping them. Physicians and scholars like Weyer himself owned these texts. These were educated men interested in natural philosophy, which at the time included what we'd now call occult practices. The line between science and magic was blurry. Nobility owned grimoires, wealthy individuals with education, resources, and private libraries. Grimoires required expensive materials and time to practice. Professional magicians who made their living claiming magical abilities would need grimoires to lend authority to their practices. The common thread across all these groups was education, literacy, especially in Latin, and resources. These weren't peasant practices. Grimoire magic was elite magic. The grimoire system assumes a specific cosmology. God is supreme, and all power ultimately derives from the divine. Angels and demons exist as real spiritual beings that inhabit a realm beyond normal human perception. Demons are fallen angels who rebelled against God and were cast out of heaven, but they retain their angelic nature and powers, now corrupted. Demons retain their hierarchy, just as angels are organized into choirs and ranks: seraphim, cherubim, thrones, dominions, virtues, powers, principalities, archangels, angels. Demons retain these same ranks after their fall. Demons can be commanded. Despite their fall, demons remain bound by certain divine laws. A human invoking God's names and authority can compel them to obey. And this is not worship. The grimoires insist they're not making pacts with or worshipping demons. They're commanding them, forcing them to serve, using God's power to subjugate rebellious spirits. Whether this theological framework is valid is another question. The point is, this is what practitioners believed. They thought they were doing high Christian magic, not black magic. They were compelling demons, not serving them. What physical evidence do we have of actual practice? Some grimoire manuscripts show signs of heavy use, staining, wear patterns, frequent opening to certain pages. This suggests active consultation, not just collection. A few manuscripts contain handwritten notes in the margins. Most are frustratingly brief. Appeared as described, worked for finding X, used on date. Nothing detailed enough to verify actual experiences. Witch trial and heresy trial records sometimes mention grimoires being found in accused persons' possessions. People were tried for owning these books, though proving they actually used them is different from proving ownership. Letters between scholars sometimes reference grimoires or magical practices in coded language, but these are usually vague, written carefully to avoid explicit admission of practice. What we don't have are detailed first-person accounts of summonings. We don't have journals describing the experience in depth. We don't have clear records of results. The evidence is suggestive but not conclusive. People owned these books. Some people probably tried the rituals. What they experienced, we largely can't verify from historical records. It's worth noting that from the beginning, many, perhaps most educated people considered grimoires nonsense. Weyer himself was mocking the claims while documenting them. Reginald Scott, who translated Weyer's demon catalogue, was similarly skeptical. He included it in his book to show the absurdity of magical beliefs. The church condemned grimoire magic as heresy, not because it worked, but because attempting it showed lack of faith and dangerous credulity. Many scholars who studied these texts did so as curiosities, not as practical manuals. But some did believe, some did practice, and the texts were copied, preserved, and transmitted across centuries. This is the historical context. Texts compiled in the 16th and 17th centuries, drawing on earlier sources, part of a larger grimoire tradition. Owned by educated people, some believers, some skeptics, some uncertain. Gremory appears in these texts not as myth or legend, but as entry number 51 or 56 in a catalogue, documented, described, assigned rank and powers. Whether anyone successfully summoned this demon, we can't determine from historical evidence, but we can determine this. People took these texts seriously enough to copy them, preserve them, and in some cases, try to use them. Let's examine Gremory's description systematically. The grimoires tell us Gremory appears as a beautiful woman with a duchess's crown tied about her waist and riding on a great camel. We have three elements here: beautiful woman, duchess's crown positioned unusually, and camel. What can we actually determine about these choices? In medieval and early modern European thought, beauty, particularly female beauty, carried complex associations. Biblical and classical literature portrayed beautiful women as sources of both blessing and danger. Eve brought the fall. Delilah destroyed Samson. Helen's face launched 1,000 ships and burned Troy. The sirens lured sailors to death. Female beauty represented temptation, desire, the dangerous pull away from reason and divine law. But beauty also represented value, prize, something worth pursuing and possessing. For a demon to take the form of a beautiful woman activates both associations, attractive and desirable, but potentially dangerous and deceptive. A duchess is high nobility, married to or inheriting the title of duke. In European feudal hierarchy, duchesses ranked below queens and princesses, but above countesses and baronesses. A duchess possesses wealth, land, political connections, and social power. The crown is a symbol of this authority and status. But the positioning is strange, tied about her waist rather than worn on the head. This detail appears in both Weyer and the Ars Goetia. It's not a copying error. It's consistent across sources. We can only speculate about what this means, since the texts don't provide interpretation. Improper positioning might signal something wrong, inverted, not truly noble. The waist placement might reference a belt or girdle, items that could have their own symbolic significance. Or it could simply be a distinctive, identifying feature, making Gremory recognizable among the 72 demons. The camel is the most unusual element. Camels were not native to Europe. They were exotic animals associated with the Middle East, North Africa, and Asia. In medieval European imagination, camels represented foreign lands where magic was believed to be stronger. They symbolized trade routes and the transport of valuable goods. They suggested endurance and the ability to travel vast distances. And they embodied the exotic, the unfamiliar, the not quite civilized. Only one other demon in the Ars Goetia rides a camel, King Paimon, who appeareth in the form of a man sitting upon a dromedary with a crown most glorious on his head. But Paimon is described as male. Gremory is the only female-appearing demon on a camel. The Middle Eastern imagery suggests these grimoires were drawing on magical traditions from outside Christian Europe. Arabic grimoires, Islamic mysticism, texts that made their way west through cultural exchange. Put the complete image together and you get a beautiful woman, desirable but dangerous, wearing a duchess's crown wrong, suggesting nobility but inverted, riding a camel, exotic and foreign and wealthy. Each element serves a purpose. The combination is memorable. The bizarre details make Gremory distinctive and recognizable. Each component carries cultural associations, and as an identification guide, the specific details help confirm you've summoned the right demon. But the grimoires themselves don't explain the symbolism. Modern interpreters have offered various readings, but the original texts present these details as straightforward description, not metaphor. Let's examine what Gremory offers. The first power is to tell of all things past, present, and to come. This is divination, temporal knowledge, information across time. Why is this valuable? Knowing the past means learning secrets, discovering what actually happened in disputed matters, uncovering hidden history. Knowing the present means understanding what's happening right now in distant places, what people are really thinking or planning. Knowing the future means anticipating outcomes, preparing for coming events, making decisions with foreknowledge. For someone in the 16th or 17th century, before modern information systems, before rapid communication, before systematic intelligence gathering, this power would be enormously valuable. Knowledge was power. Insider information could determine success or failure in business, politics, romance, and warfare. The second power is of treasures hid and what they lie in. This is wealth finding, but not metaphorical or spiritual wealth, literal, hidden treasure. In an era before banks, before systematic financial records, wealth was physical, gold, jewels, valuable objects, and it was often hidden. People buried valuables during wars. They hid them during estate disputes. They died without revealing locations. They lost them in shipwrecks or abandoned homes. Europe was full of hidden treasure, actual valuable objects somewhere, if only someone knew where to look. The specification and what they lie in adds detail. Is it in a wooden chest, an iron box, a stone chamber? Information that would help actually locate and recover it. This is practical magic. Find money, become wealthy, solve financial problems. The third power is to procure the love of women, both young and old. This is romantic and sexual manipulation magic. The phrasing is specific. Of women, both young and old. Not men, women. This assumes a male practitioner seeking female affection, and not just one woman, both young and old, suggests any woman, all women, whatever the summoner desires. In an era of arranged marriages, strict social hierarchies, and limited romantic freedom, this offered the ability to marry advantageously by attracting a wealthy woman. It provided sexual access by making women desire you physically. It enabled social advancement through romance with someone above your station. It's about control, power, and access. All three powers address practical concerns: information and intelligence, money and wealth, romance and sex. These are universal human desires, but they're especially acute for someone with ambition but limited power, a younger son who won't inherit, a scholar seeking advancement, a merchant competing in dangerous markets, an upwardly mobile person needing edges. Gremory offers shortcuts to success. The grimoires are descriptive, not explanatory, but we can make careful inferences. The grimoires were designed to appeal to specific audiences. The demons offer powers that would attract ambitious, educated men with limited means, not wealthy nobles with established power. They wouldn't need demons, but people on the way up, needing advantages. The grimoires synthesize multiple cultural traditions: the Middle Eastern imagery with the camel, the European feudal structure with the duchess, the mixture of divine names from Hebrew scripture and Christian liturgy. These texts combined elements from different sources. The grimoires treat demons as tools. This isn't theological discourse about the nature of evil. It's practical instruction about how to use spiritual entities to achieve goals. The tone is transactional and procedural. The grimoires assume demons work reliably. They're presented as having specific, predictable functions. Summon Gremory. You get these three powers. Like a catalogue. Here's what each one does. Choose based on your needs. We can't know why the grimoire compilers chose to describe Gremory as a woman on a camel with a crown at her waist. We can't know whether these descriptions came from someone's actual experience, from older sources they copied, or from creative imagination. What we can say is, the descriptions were carefully crafted to be specific, memorable, and consistent. They served clear purposes within the grimoire system, and for over 400 years, people have found these descriptions compelling enough to copy, study, and remember. For roughly 150 years after the grimoire's peak circulation, interest in ceremonial magic declined. The Enlightenment brought rationalism. Science explained phenomena that had seemed magical. Demon summoning became a historical curiosity studied by scholars, not a living practice. But in the mid-19th century, occultism revived. Eliphas Lévy, whose real name was Alphonse Louis Constant, lived from 1810 to 1875. He was a defrocked French Catholic priest who became fascinated with esoteric traditions. His major work, Dogme et rituel de la haute magie, which translates to Transcendental Magic, was published in 1855 and 1856. This book systematized Western magical traditions and reinterpreted grimoire magic. Lévy's influence was enormous. He didn't just copy old grimoires. He created a framework for understanding them as symbolic, psychological, and spiritual tools rather than literal demon summoning. He wrote about the Getic demons, analyzing their symbolism and suggesting that working with them was a method of self-exploration rather than commanding external entities. This reinterpretation made grimoire magic respectable again. You weren't trafficking with hell. You were exploring consciousness. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn came next, founded in England in 1888 by William Robert Woodman, William Wynne Westcott, and Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers. The Golden Dawn synthesized ceremonial magic, Kabbalah, alchemy, astrology, and tarot into a comprehensive initiatory system. They taught Goetic magic as part of their advanced curriculum. Members who reached high degrees learned rituals for summoning the 72 spirits. But their approach emphasized that these were psychological forces or archetypal energies, not literal demons from hell. S.L. MacGregor Mathers translated the Lemegeton and Ars Goetia in 1904. This translation made the text widely available in English for the first time. Aleister Crowley lived from 1875 to 1947. He was a member of the Golden Dawn before being expelled. He went on to become the most famous and infamous occultist of the 20th century. In 1904, Crowley published Mather's translation of the Goetia, with his own introduction, commentary, and illustrations. Crowley claimed to have performed extensive operations with Getic demons. His magical diaries contain references to these workings, though the details are often cryptic. His approach was pragmatic. Whether demons were real external entities or psychological constructs didn't matter much to him. What mattered was whether the rituals produced results. This pragmatism influenced later occultists significantly. Throughout the 1900s, grimoire magic remained part of Western occult practice. Published editions of the Lemegeton became available. Occult publishers like Weyer Books, Llewellyn, and others made the texts accessible. Organizations teaching ceremonial magic, like the Builders of the Adytum, the Fraternity of the Inner Light, and various Golden Dawn successor orders, included Getic work in their curricula. Academic study of grimoires increased as well. Scholars began examining these texts as historical and cultural documents rather than just curiosities. In the 1970s and 1980s, a new magical movement emerged in England, led by practitioners like Peter J. Carroll and Ray Sherwin. They called it chaos magic. Chaos magicians took an extremely pragmatic view. If a ritual works, use it. If it doesn't work, modify it or discard it. They stripped away elaborate preparations, expensive tools, and theoretical frameworks. They experimented with grimoire rituals, testing what produced results and what was unnecessary. Some chaos magicians worked with Goetic demons using simplified rituals. Others created their own systems entirely. The movement emphasized results over tradition. Today, grimoire texts are widely available. Multiple published editions of the Lee Megaton exist. You can buy them on Amazon, at bookstores, or from occult publishers. Complete texts are available free on websites like sacredtexts.com, the Esoteric Archives, and academic repositories. PDF scans of actual manuscripts can be viewed through library websites. The original manuscripts are preserved in institutions like the British Library, Bodleian Library, and Folger Shakespeare Library. Researchers can examine them directly or access high-quality digital scans. This means anyone interested can read exactly what the grimoires say about Gremory. No barriers of access exist. Some people still practice Goetic magic today. Online communities exist where practitioners discuss their experiences. Reddit has active forums on demonology and ceremonial magic. Discord servers are dedicated to grimoire practices. Blogs and YouTube channels document workings. The approaches vary widely. Some follow traditional ceremonial methods, using elaborate circles, proper tools, and correct timing. Others take a psychological approach, viewing the demons as aspects of consciousness or archetypal forces, with the ritual as a method of accessing internal resources. Some practice demonology, actually worshipping demons rather than commanding them, building relationships rather than forcing obedience. And chaos, magicians use whatever works, mixing traditions freely and adapting to modern contexts. What do practitioners claim about Gremory specifically? Based on published accounts and online discussions, some report successful divination sessions. Some claim improvement in romantic situations after working with this demon. Some describe the manifestation as visual but not quite physical, like seeing through smoke. Some say they felt a presence but saw nothing. Some report no results at all. The experiences vary dramatically, which suggests either individual psychological differences in how people experience ritual, varying skill levels in performing the procedures, the whole thing being subjective experience rather than objective contact with external entities, or some combination of all these factors. We can't verify any of these claims. They're personal experiences, not reproducible experiments. Scholars study grimoires as historical documents. Research focuses on manuscript history and transmission, cultural context and influences, religious and social functions, and literary analysis. Academic books on grimoire tradition include The Goetia of Dr. Rudd, edited by Stephen Skinner and David Rankine, Grimoires, A History of Magic Books by Owen Davies, and various papers in academic journals on medieval and early modern magic. This scholarship treats grimoires seriously as historical and cultural artifacts without making claims about whether the magic works. The grimoire tradition continued. The texts were preserved. Gremory remains documented, accessible, studied, and in some cases, practiced. The 56th spirit of the Ars Goetia hasn't been forgotten. Let's be clear about what we can verify. The grimoires exist. The Pseudomonarchia, Daemonum from 1577 and 1583, and the Ars Goetia from 17th century manuscripts are real historical documents. We can examine them, date them, and trace their provenance. Gremory is consistently described across sources. The description remains remarkably stable. Beautiful woman, duchess's crown at waist, riding camel, 3 specific powers, 26 legions. This consistency suggests either faithful copying from a common source or a description that proved memorable and useful enough to preserve accurately. People owned these books. Manuscript copies survive because people preserved them. Library records, ownership marks, and historical references confirm these texts circulated among educated Europeans. Some people attempted these rituals. Trial records, marginal annotations, and secondary references suggest actual practice, not just theoretical interest. The tradition continues. From Weyer in 1577 to modern practitioners in 2024, people have consistently engaged with this material. But we cannot verify several crucial things. Whether demons exist as independent entities remains unprovable. The grimoires assume they do. Practitioners claim they do, but we cannot objectively verify the existence of non-physical entities. Whether anyone successfully summoned Gremory is unknowable. We have claims, but no proof. The experiences described could be genuine supernatural contact, psychological phenomena, hallucination, delusion, or fabrication. Whether the powers work remains unverified. Did anyone actually find treasure through Gremory's guidance? Did the love magic produce real effects? The evidence is anecdotal at best. The origin of the grimoire tradition before Weyer is lost. He cited an older source, now gone. How much older? Who compiled it? We don't know. Why this specific system developed is unexplained. Why 72 demons? Why these specific ranks and powers? The grimoires don't explain their own origins. People approach this material through different interpretive frameworks. The religious or traditional framework takes the grimoires at face value. It says the texts document real demons, fallen angels who actually exist in spiritual reality. The rituals, when properly performed, genuinely summon these entities. The results are real supernatural interventions. The psychological framework treats demons as archetypal forces or aspects of human consciousness. Gremory represents desires for wealth, romance, and knowledge. Internal drives externalized into dramatic ritual form. The rituals work through psychological mechanisms, focused attention, altered states, and symbolic engagement with unconscious material. The historical and cultural framework studies grimoires as cultural documents reflecting medieval and early modern beliefs about the supernatural. They tell us about how people understood reality, organized knowledge, and attempted to exercise power in uncertain worlds. Whether demons exist becomes less important than understanding what the texts meant to their original audiences. The skeptical framework dismisses the supernatural entirely. It views the grimoires as elaborate fantasies or deliberate frauds. The descriptions are invented, the rituals don't work, and the entire tradition is based on delusion and credulity. Any reported results are coincidence, confirmation bias, or deliberate deception. All 4 frameworks can be defended. The evidence doesn't conclusively prove any single interpretation. Here's what remains genuinely mysterious. Why these specific details? A beautiful woman riding a camel with a crown at her waist. Where did this image come from? Who first described it this way? Why did it stick? If someone just made it up, why these particular elements? Why not something more obviously symbolic or more conventionally demonic? If it came from actual experience, what was that experience? Whose experience? The grimoires don't say. Why has this persisted for 400 years through multiple cultural contexts, scientific revolutions, and religious changes? Yet Gremory remains documented, discussed, and remembered. Many historical texts are forgotten. Most don't get reprinted, studied, or practiced across centuries. What makes this material resilient? Is it just interesting fiction that people enjoy? Is it that the desires it addresses, wealth, love, knowledge, never go out of style? Is it evidence of something genuinely useful in the rituals, whether psychological or supernatural? Why do people keep trying despite zero objective proof of success? People still attempt Getic rituals. Some report results. Many report nothing, but the practice continues. What drives this? Desperation, curiosity, genuine experience, a combination? These questions don't have clear answers. Regardless of whether demons exist, the grimoire tradition tells us something important about human nature. We want certainty. The grimoires promise definite results. Summon this demon, get these powers. In an uncertain world, that promise is compelling. We want shortcuts. Normal paths to wealth, romance, and knowledge involve work, time, and luck. The grimoires offer direct access through ritual. We want control. Life feels chaotic and unmanageable. Magic offers a framework where correct procedures produce predictable outcomes. We systematize everything. Even something as strange as demon summoning gets organized into hierarchies, catalogs, and procedural manuals. Humans create order out of chaos. We preserve what fascinates us. These texts survived because generation after generation found them interesting enough to copy, study, argue about, and practice. Whether Gremory is real or not, the grimoires are real. They're part of human cultural history, part of how we've tried to make sense of reality and gain power within it. We've journeyed through the grimoire sources that document Gremory, the 56th spirit of the Ars Goetia. We've read the exact text from the Pseudomonarchia Daemonum from 1577 and 1583, and the Ars Goetia from the 17th century. We've seen how Gremory fits into a larger system of 72 demons, each carefully catalogued with rank, appearance, powers, and legions. We've examined the ritual procedures the grimoires provide for summoning. We've explored the historical context, who wrote these texts, who owned them, who possibly used them. We've analyzed the symbolism of Gremory's appearance and powers. We've traced how this material has been transmitted from the 16th century to the present day. And we've acknowledged what we can and cannot verify from historical evidence. Over 440 years of documented grimoire tradition preserve this. Gremory consistently described as a duke of hell, appearing as a beautiful woman with a duchess's crown tied about her waist, riding a great camel, offering 3 specific powers: knowledge of past, present, and future, revelation of hidden treasures, procurement of the love of women, commanding 26 legions of spirits. The description is specific, consistent across sources, preserved in multiple manuscript copies, translated into multiple languages, still accessible today. But we cannot know whether demons exist independently of human belief. whether anyone actually succeeded in summoning Gremory, whether the promised powers actually work, why this specific tradition developed, where the original descriptions came from. The grimoire texts are real. What they document, whether it's objective supernatural reality or elaborate cultural fantasy, remains an open question. Whether you believe demons are real entities, psychological constructs, cultural artifacts, or complete fiction, the grimoire tradition is a remarkable human creation. These texts represent systematic attempts to catalogue and control the supernatural. They show synthesis of multiple cultural and religious traditions. They preserve elaborate ritual procedures passed down across centuries. They offer a window into how our ancestors understood reality, and they demonstrate ongoing human engagement with mystery and the unknown. Gremory exists as a documented entity in historical texts. That much is certain. What Gremory is beyond that documentation, whether real demon, psychological archetype, literary creation, or something else entirely, that's a question each person must answer for themselves. The primary sources are available. You can read the Pseudomonarchia Daemonum. You can read the Ars Goetia. You can examine the actual texts, not just summaries or interpretations. Draw your own conclusions. Decide what you think these grimoires represent. Maybe they're historical curiosities, interesting but ultimately meaningless. Maybe they're psychological tools, useful for self-exploration regardless of supernatural claims. Maybe they're accurate records of genuine supernatural entities. Maybe there's something else entirely that we haven't considered. The documentation is clear. The interpretation remains open. For over 400 years, someone has been reading about Gremory, copying the description, thinking about what it means. Some dismissed it as nonsense. Some tried the rituals. Some studied it academically. Some believed devoutly. The 56th spirit remains, documented, discussed, preserved. A beautiful woman, a duchess's crown at her waist, a great camel, 3 promises, knowledge, treasure, love, 26 legions awaiting command. The grimoire sits open, the description is clear, the ritual is documented. What you do with that information is entirely up to you. If you want to explore more documented occult history, primary sources, verified texts, historical practices, subscribe to the Midnight Archives. Hit that like button. Tell me in the comments, what other demons from the Ars Goetia should we examine? What other grimoires deserve this kind of deep analysis? Thank you for joining me in this exploration of grimoire tradition, historical demonology, and the persistent human fascination with the supernatural. The grimoire remains available. The texts are accessible. The tradition continues. Whether Gremory is real or not, the documentation is undeniable.